back, movie fans. This is Sequels Suck, the podcast dedicated to sequels, prequels, remakes, and all things awesome in film. And today, as a special Valentine's Day treat, it's coming up soon, we decided we'd go a little romantic and we would venture into the world of My Bloody Valentine. But because we like you guys so much, we thought we would give you an extra special treat. And instead of just us three droning on this episode, we have an extra special guest, the writer, editor, and director of the film. And I'm going to be bold and say, friend of the show, Patrick Lussier is back. Patrick, how are you?
Yes. Good. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me back.
It is absolutely sensational. I was thrilled when you said that you would like to come on and talk about this film. I was thrilled when you said you wanted to come back, honestly. And it's very, very exciting to get to talk to you again, because we get to talk about something near and dear to us here, which is a remake, and it's also a horror film. It's fitting right into this sweet pocket that we love to chat about here, and that we're a little bit obsessed with in our own time. So thank you very much for joining us. My Bloody Valentine. The first thing I want to ask right out of the gate, in your mind, is the film called My Bloody Valentine or My Bloody Valentine 3D? What is the official title?
The official title, as far as I know, I'm going to turn around and look. It's actually just My Bloody Valentine.
Just My Bloody Valentine. This is what I've always thought, because you can never quite trust marketing.
That is correct. But I literally had to check, because it was just like, because I've always seen it as 3D as a way to discern it from the previous one from '81. So.
Yeah, well, it's been a while. 2009 was
2009. Yeah. So what's that? 13, 14 years.
Yeah, coming up on 14 years, which is a significant number. 14 years,
yeah.
14th of February. So
yeah,
look, if ever there was a time perhaps to revisit the film as a sequel, maybe this might be a good year. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, it's if Avatar can do it, why not us, right?
Hey, look,
it's the same amount of time.
Well, that is one of the points that we wanted to jump in on, is that this being a 3D film that holds up in an era of films where they kind of retrospectively tried to make something 3D that wasn't 3D, or something that they kind of last minute were like, oh no, let's make it 3D. This film actually looks like a proper 3D film, and it's shot like a proper 3D film. And now that we're getting 3D mania again with Avatar, are you feeling an urge to revisit the medium yourself after making two 3D films back to back?
To be honest, I haven't even thought about it.
Oh wow!
It certainly was because it was shot native 3D. We didn't, there wasn't a post conversion, wasn't any of that stuff. We shot it with the big refrigerator sized 3D cameras. It was sort of a unique skill at the time to be able to do that, because most people post converted and did it after the fact. And I think that's part of the reason why the 3D and it holds up so well, is because it was not post converted, and it was shot specifically for it. If the opportunity came up to do it again, I wouldn't hesitate to re-embrace the medium. At the same time, to be honest, it hadn't occurred to me that anybody would want that. I think the Avatar thing is such a unique thing unto itself. It's an outlier, But sure, why not? Absolutely,
why not? That's good. That's good, actually. I wanted to dive in a bit at the beginning, because it's something I've been a little bit curious about. Is how did you meet Todd Farmer? Because you guys have worked together a bit. Is this a relationship that was born out of you being put together? Did you guys know each other? How did it come to pass you started working together?
I was actually doing a re-edit and designing and basically ghost directing reshoots on a movie called Darkness Falls, the Killer Tooth Fairy movie.
I know
that was
movie,
actually done in Australia, and that out of that, the same company, Revolution Studios at the time, which I don't think exists anymore. They had another film called, at the time, it was called Scarecrow, which Todd wrote, and they had asked me if I wanted to direct it, and said yes. So I started working with Todd on developing the screenplay that he'd written, which was really good, very much like The Shining on a farm, on a sunflower farm. and had all sorts of cool elements to it. And ultimately, that project went into turnaround. It was made as The Messengers by the Pang brothers. But Todd
Ah,
and I stayed friends, and I think if you see the sequel, Messengers 2 with Norman Reedus, which Todd wrote, that actually is a lot closer to the movie that we were going to. They actually based it, I think, on Todd's original screenplay.
oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then we pitched a remake of Hills of Eyes to Wes, but ultimately they already had something going with Alexander Aja and everything. And then we worked on a bunch of different things for a long time before Valentine circled up, and we needed somebody to come in and take over the scripting, and because Todd and I had worked together so much, he came in to do that.
Is this
Just at
something
the
that
end of the writer's strike of 2007.
right? And is it something that you and yourself went out and sought out, or is this something the studio was looking to do with the remake?
No, the studio, Mike Pasternak, who was at Lionsgate at the time, I think is still there. It's one of the original founders, I think, of Lionsgate. He had worked as an executive, I think, in the original My Bloody Valentine
Wow.
years and years before, and he had wanted to remake it or revisit that property.
Yeah.
But it was owned by Paramount. Now, Paramount, at the time, they had hired me. Lionsgate had hired me to do the recutting and writing and directing like 40 pages of reshoots. So I guess like a third of the movie, or more of the Jessica Alba movie.
Yeah.
And because that started out as a Paramount project, and then Lionsgate took it from Paramount as part of whatever deal, part of their deal of, yeah, we'll take this off your hands, was to get My Bloody Valentine. So that's where that came in. And then one of the days that I was coming in to show the new recutting of the new material that I shot over the summer of 2007 to Peter Block and Mike Pasternak, they had literally moments before I walked in, they closed the deal on getting the remake rights to My Bloody Valentine. And they said, hey, do you want to direct the remake of My Bloody Valentine? Absolutely. And then they were like, hey, do you want to do it in 3D? Absolutely. So that's literally how that happened, walking in the right room at the right time.
Was there a little bit of you that kind of sung a quiet victory because the original is considered to be a Canadian film, and you yourself
Yeah,
from
I
Canada,
mean,
you're like, yes, I'm taking it back.
I had worked in a video store in the early '80s, so I was acutely aware of all those slasher movies of that era, the Canadian tax credit movies. Happy Birthday to Me, Prom Night, Terror Train, all those movies came out of that era. A lot of them all made, by similar people, and a lot of the early Cronenberg movies are part of that boom of Canadian fueled horror movies.
So, Patrick, was this always going to be a remake? Because I feel like when I was like researching in the last few weeks and hearing old interviews, it feels like some of the originals from 1981, there was a push for a sequel to that film. So once Lionsgate got it, do you think it was just going to be a straight remake, or did you ever hear of talk of an actual sequel, direct sequel?
No. I mean, I had read that at one time they had George Mahalka, the original director, and other the original filmmakers of the original film had talked about doing a sequel. So I had read that myself, but the film was never presented that way to me.
Yeah.
They had very much wanted to do a remake. I think part of it was because the movie was a one-off. It wasn't like Nightmare on Elm Street. It wasn't like Friday the 13th or Halloween. It hadn't spawned a million sequels or so the IP was known, but it was pretty niche. It wasn't something that was an IP that suddenly people would be like, oh my God, we're going to do that. We have to, like the last round of Halloween movies where, let's retcon the whole Jamie Lee Curtis storyline, things like that. That was never discussed, doing that.
I was listening to the director's commentary the other night that you and Todd Farmer did of the film, and something that made me laugh a lot, and got me thinking about how it must have been for you on the film. You mentioned there's one shot. There's actually two shots you mentioned. One is when Jensen Ackles, Tom, pulls into the gravel car park at the front of the mine,
Right.
and goes to talk to the foreman. And the other is when Jamie King is running towards the doors of the mine when Harry Warden is chasing her. And in both of those
Right.
shots, you mentioned those were the hardest days on set, and that you had members of the crew who had worked on giant monster movies and had been in the industry for years. Like, this is the hardest day. Getting this shot was so difficult. And when you look at the shot as a film viewer, it's just a shot of a car pulling into a car park and there's a bit of water on the ground. But you talked about how hard that was. And then I realized after you mentioned that not only did you direct and create this film from the ground up, you also had to edit it. Coming from an editing background, was this a brutal process, having to edit it now that you knew exactly what went into every shot? Were there moments you're like, I can't cut that. That took 6 hours. This is going to kill me.
Yes and no. You know, there's it takes a while. Part of the reason you have an editing process that lasts for a number of weeks is because you have to get over shooting it. You have to get over the pain of actually what it took to capture it, so that you can actually kill your darlings, as they say. Or Wes Craven used to call it, you have to be able to beat the shit out of it. And so you have to get to a point where you can do that, where you're no longer attached to the experience of people always getting electrocuted and dragging yourself through coal dust and coal mud and all the things that you did to get there.
Because it is all real.
Yeah,
you shot on location in real mines, in real hospitals.
That day was I think it was even the same day, those shots, because it was at a real coal mine. I think the Rosebud coal mine. One of them, they had a number of them at the time. And the weather was so bad, and this was our only day to get there, so we were going to get it regardless. And it was just insane. And also because of the 3D at that time, you needed like 3 times the amount of light. So all the electricity that you needed for all that stuff with the rain and with everything, you were using massive amounts of lights, and the crew trying to drag them around a real location where you just sink in the mud. And it was it's the type of thing that if you knew how hard it was going to be beforehand, you wouldn't do it. But
I think that's probably true of every film ever.
And I think I've told the story before. Brian Pearson, the DP of it, was at one point, it was really hard for us to see dailies, because to see them in 3D. And at one point we were driving to set after, I think, having slept for like 4 hours, and he was almost in tears, just like, I just don't know what we're doing. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know. And I was just like, it doesn't matter. We just have to keep going. It doesn't, you literally sort of went insane, because you just had to keep going. The only way out was through. So we'll discover it later, which we did. And it, the part of the big challenge of editing the film after the fact wasn't, that it took so long to do it. It was the fact that you were cutting with one eye. So if there's a right and left camera, one shoots into a mirror, the other shoots through it. You're cutting with like this one. And then you have faith that this one worked.
Oh my God.
You've seen dailies in 3D, but then you discover that there's anomalies, and when you're putting them together in post, that there's a misregistrations, and so there was this whole other technical factor that could basically fuck with what it was you were trying to do, because of the native 3D, and then the time when you would go into post production. And we had a great color timer and a 3D specialist in post named Jason Fabreau, and the Technicolor, and he and I sitting there hours and hours and hours, with my son who worked on it, who was the visual effects editor on it, and Blair Miller, the assistant editor, and we were the pain that you would have in your head, like misregistered 3D when you're looking at it, is a mind ripping experience.
So you're
Until it's
essentially
all aligned.
you're making two films at once, and then trying
Well,
to
yeah,
make
and
them
then
look
you
exactly the
overlay them,
same.
and
Yeah.
it's and if even the color is different between the two eyes, right? Then that all begins to fracture your head. If the alignment is suddenly like this or skewed or like that, all those things begin to rip your cerebral cortex apart. So many Advil days, as you would sit there, just sort of like, and the thing you do when you're watching, because you're watching it all with the 3D glasses in order to see it, is you just sometimes have to close one eye, because then the 3D goes away because you're just looking through one lens, because it was just a painful experience. And once it all gets lined up, it's great, but it's, it doesn't come out of the box that way. It's a thing.
So you're not dying to make another 3D movie anytime soon?
No. I mean, I would totally do it. It's I guess it's like having children, right? People forget that how hard it was, and they go ahead and do it again. Not, who am I to judge such things? But it's a thing. You just know once you know that going in, it's just like, okay. And I think it would be much better now. These were early days in that sort of new 3D technology.
It is interesting looking at a film when you're saying it was new 3D technology now, and then seeing the reference point is the new Avatar film, which as we're talking is still in cinemas. And I honestly, like, I am a fan of 3D films that feel like a 3D film, in the sense that I think horror is one of the perfect genres for it, because you want to feel like there's some kind of threat. You want to feel like there's something coming at you. And I feel, as an audience member, I feel we're getting a bit too far away from that, trying to get too fancy with it. I kind of want us to pull back a bit to these days. Like the copy that I have of My Bloody Valentine, I have like the cardboard.
The anaglyph glasses, the red and white glasses, red and blue
that
glasses.
came with it. And you sit there in the lounge room with all the lights off and the glasses on. It's just quite a fun experience, because it really heightens the idea that you're watching a fun horror movie, like a slasher movie. And then going to the cinemas now, and it's just like you're almost wearing sunglasses, and it's a bit too. I much prefer the older days.
It's a little precious. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a little. Well, we don't do that. We're better than that, and it's kind of like the title of our movie told us that we were not better than that in any way. The title informed us of everything, and so you lean into it. I mean, it's pretty clear what you're being paid to do.
You did lean into it, like something that came up a bit in the director's commentary, and also in a couple of things that I read, is that when it came to the kills in this movie. That's Patrick Lussier. That's you coming up with things like that. Amazing. One of my favorite kills that I like. One of my at least top 5 kills of all time is the shovel through the head. Decapitation through the jaw. That is just. But Todd Farmer was saying on the director's comment, that was you. You came up with that idea because you thought that'd look really cool.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
So you're a sicko.
Yeah. Well, it's. I think all those things, they just start with what if. Right. That's all those conversations. What if this? And then so much of it is is location based. You're like, the death of Kevin Ty in the film with the pickaxe on the floor. They were like, well, how the fuck are we going to do this? Well, let's do this. And it's so you discovered a location. A buddy of mine who's since passed away, horror writer Tom Piccirilli, suggested the Jaw ripoff.
Yeah, that's great.
Tom Atkins, and these are just conversations that you have. Gary Tunnicliffe, our special effects makeup center, was great at coming up with what do I and sort of scary and wonderful bits of murderous mayhem. So but most things come out of the location. Like there's something that's written, and then the location rewrites it based on the what if we do this, what if we do that, how is this going to become that, how do we make this work? And that's where that stuff comes from.
And I guess the interesting thing is coming up with really cool death scenes, but also having this spin on them that it's going to be in 3D. So how do we sort of work with that?
That was a huge thing for the studio. the studio was 3D was how the movie was going to be marketed. So they were, to them, there's lots of coming at you in My Bloody Valentine, but to them, while we were shooting it, there was never enough. They were constantly, well, why isn't he doing this? Why doesn't he do that? Why doesn't he at the end of that scene throw his coffee cup at the camera? Because he would break the camera, because the camera has a big mirror on the front. So you can't actually do that. You have to be very you have to really think about how those things work, and when you use them, and you don't want to overuse them, and you have to sort of know how everything's going to go together. Max Penner, our stereographer, when we were shooting it, it was great, because he would talk about, well, like the bloody hand hanging off the side of the thing in the beginning when Tom Atkins comes to the hospital, and he was just like, well, I can pull that really far out, but if you cut to something that's really shallow in the next cut, it'll be really jarring. I said, no, I'm going to dissolve. I mean, my editing background, I knew that was going to be. I say, oh, then I'll pull it really far out. So and literally, he's pulling that 3D as we're shooting, like a focus puller is adjusting focus. He has the same sort of slider, and he's adjusting the 3D to do this, and then pulling it back. He can do that all within the shot.
Oh wow!
So as you're panning, you can have something that goes like that, and then the way, like the shotgun that Kevin Ty brings out. That's exactly what that does. He does that. So, and that's a lot harder to do when you're post converting.
Yeah.
Because post converting, you're making a bunch of slices, right? Here's a bunch of slices of 3D. You're taking a mono image and doing that. Well, here we actually have the two images, and we're sliding them and bringing them closer together and doing that while we're shooting. So that's part of the reason why it hurts until you get all those things along.
Yeah. I don't envy your process of making it, but I do appreciate the effort. It's cool. Looks cool as hell.
Well, and that's what it's supposed to be, right? It was a great opportunity to be able to do that, and sometimes everything just in life is a big self-inflicted wound. So that was definitely one.
I did see online this morning that in Australia they wanted that movie banned here because of like how gory it was and the R18 rating that we got here.
Oh, wow. Well,
the year
that's
it
exciting.
came out, it was in the top 5 or top 3 most complained about films to the Australian Film Registration Board because of how gory it was.
In the top 5.
Really?
With a dozen complaints because it's gory violence.
I'm going to put that on my resume.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, welcome to Australia.
That feels like bragging rights.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to scare Australians. Everything here wants to kill us, and people were still like, "No, this is too much."
Yeah, too gory.
Yeah, wow. I feel I'm in exclusive company.
So it's mission accomplished.
Yeah.
We were all clearly okay.
Actually, what was it rated in the US?
It was rated R. Yeah.
Oh, it was rated R.
Grisly images and violence and nudity and.
And what are we complaining about here? What are all the Australians complaining about?
Language and sex and blah blah blah.
But is your R the same as our R?
I believe
that I don't know. I can't.
So what does R mean in the States?
R is I think it's no one under 17 or under 18 permitted without.
Oh, okay, so the same.
Without an adult.
Yeah.
So.
In Australia, it goes R and then it goes X, which is essentially we don't release X.
Yeah, I think it used to do X here, and then they changed it to NC-17.
Yes.
There was a bunch of protests and things like that. But I think in the and I don't think Wes would mind telling the story now because it's long after the fact. It's probably been out there in the original last house on the left. Wes they kept getting an X, right, and then you can't advertise in papers and things like that. So he found an R banner from some other film and just slapped it on, cut it onto the beginning of Last House on the Left, and they sent it out as if it was an R movie, and they had no R rating from the MPAA, and that was where all all his problems with the MPA for years afterwards were caused by that. They never forgave him for that.
Well, there's another trivia fact. For a long time, Last House on the Left was banned in Australia. You couldn't get it.
Yeah, well, there you go.
For me to see it,
maybe there was good reason.
Yeah, mate, I'm just trying to think. I reckon early 2000s when I was trying to get a lot of Wes's old work, that DVD. I'm trying to think whether I had to get it from the UK or somewhere, and even then, it was kind of like.
I think it was banned in the UK. You might have probably had to get it from the US.
Yeah, it was a video nasty.
Get some,
it was on their list.
Yeah, it was a real thing, and they just had, he and Sean Cunningham had just tried to make the most violent movie they could. I mean, they went out with that specific mandate, to do that, thinking that then they'd go off and make romantic comedies or something, which never quite happened.
Did you have a bit of carte blanche to go gory with this film? Was there anything that you pitched that the studio was like, no, you can't do that? Or they're like, yes, more pickaxes and heads, please?
No. Selena Luna, who plays the motel manager, she was a friend of one of the heads of marketing, and her dog was the dog of the other heads of marketing, and they are actually why we were able to make the movie, was because we agreed to put Selena in the movie, and because we agreed to put the dog in the movie.
I was so worried for the dog.
That's what allowed us to make the film. That was literally because marketing said we will absolutely back this film.
Oh wow!
Because the new head of the studio at the time, I think he just said this is just like a blunt, punch to the face. That it didn't want to make it. It's just kind of like, well, that's sort of the idea. I mean, it's not my graceful Valentine. And their support were part of that. Part of that came from that. And in casting Selena, my only question was, can we kill her as a character? And they're like, oh, absolutely. And she was totally up for it. So we made a full animatronic dummy of her that would kick and do everything, which I believe the one head of marketing was his gift at the end of the show. So yeah, but she was awesome and great to work with, and really fun. And as was Lewis the Wonder Dog. I believe that was his name, Lewis. So,
and gave you one of the more amazing kills in the film too, when
well, it was just
up into the roof. That's just
it was just
amazing.
Sort of crazy, because that was the and then that set, because the set is so bizarre, because we made everything small for her stature, and so it's such a surreal moment in the movie. It worked out great. She was wonderful in the movie, and it gave us so many other great components, and that's in that kill in that film with Betsy Rue running around naked, which was insane in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's become sort of one of the I guess more famous and more talked about scenes that people pick up on from time to time. They're like, is she just naked for like 5 minutes of the film, just running around everywhere?
Wait, she's wearing shoes.
Heels?
She's got high heels.
I think it's 7 minutes.
Impractical shoes.
Well,
that's the first thing you do.
Those shoes were actually Betsy's and her choice.
Okay.
As was being fully naked. She had been in another movie where she had been cut out, and so she had suggested to be fully naked the whole time, and her reasoning was nobody cuts out the naked girl.
Hey,
she's
totally not wrong.
Yeah, and it was my mom, who passed away a few years ago. It was her favorite scene in the movie. I love the naked girl. She just thought it was, it showed such strength, because it wasn't a scene like her parading out with a gun, and it's not a scene that's done for an overly titillating thing. It's just when we were shooting it, you forgot she was naked.
I
She
think
forgot she was naked, and it was 1,000,000,000 degrees when we were shooting that outside, so she was the most comfortable of all of us.
yeah, I think I remember reading that she said her goal with the scene was to do the scene so well that people forgot that
Yeah,
she was
yeah.
naked, and it works. You do.
Yeah, and that totally, and the whole thing is just this massive misdirection, because you begin to forget even what kind of movie you're watching. Like, what is, because you're so caught up in this weird drama of this couple, that when suddenly the pickaxe comes out and hits Todd in the head, it's all the more shocking because of this distraction, that you've been completely have this strange out of body experience.
It's great. It's a movie that seems to revel in tricking the audiences, not just in like, oh, it's a murder mystery, but also just like tricking you into false insecurity a lot of times,
Yeah.
and playing with the expectations and things. Something we were talking about just before you came on is how we think, at least, how cool it is that the film it's a remake. The characters have the same names. You've got Harry Warden, you've got Tom, TJ, and Tom. You've got Axel. You keep all of that there, and you set everything up. And then, I mean, obviously, spoilers if people are still listening this far and haven't watched it, you idiots. But you get to the end where it's like, it's Axel, because I've seen the original. It's Axel, of course. And then at the last second, it's not Axel, and you go in a very different direction. Was that part of the goal going in, knowing that you were remaking something? Did you want to have that surprise element back in the film?
In Zane's original draft, Axel was the killer. He was also the cop. He was also the sheriff, but he was also the killer. And he had Harry Warden a prisoner in his basement for the last 10 years, and had tortured him for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then there was an intermediate draft where Harry himself was the killer. It was Harry that kind of came back. And then there was another draft that we played around with that was very crazy, where Sarah and Tom were the killers. That was like, okay, that's not going to work. I remember reading it and going, okay, this has gone off the rails. And then we just talked about hiding the killer in plain sight, making it Tom, and wanting that to be the case. That it's, when you watch film, it's pretty obvious. And then also playing Tom still, even as the killer, that he's the hero. The whole ending is he walks away. It's, if we ever had made another one, we very much had in mind that he was still the hero of that one too. We had a whole story for Tom, the rescue miner, working somewhere in a city and doing all sorts of heroic things, but still having this little murder problem.
Just a little problem.
Because my reading of it, and I guess it's a bit open-ended if you want it, but my reading is that Tom has no idea that he's also Harry Warden.
Yes.
He is genuinely a good guy who genuinely cares about Sarah and is trying to help her. It's just that he has no idea that he sometimes has a little nap, and then Harry Warden takes over and murders people.
He has two sort of big dick moments where he says to Axel, she settled for you. And then in the I'm not gonna sell the mine sort of moment. But that always liked those, all those sort of ambiguity things about his character. But at the same time, he's a good guy, when he's trying to convince Sarah that it's Axel, and he believes it. He totally believes it. And that was something that Jensen Ackles, who plays Tom, he was very much, I don't want to play this, like Skeet in Scream. I don't want to, be the guy who knows that I'm the killer and have this sort of like, I've got this on everybody. Not that's how Skeet played it, of course, but and that was we agreed, very much that was not the case. That and he kept like saying, "Am I actually going to say I'm Harry Warden?" And it's like it's the I'm Batman moment. Am I really going to do that? And it's just kind of like, "Yep, you're really going to do it." okay, he found that moment to be the hardest, I think, in the whole film. That moment of reveal and what that revelation is, and being able to just sort of surrender to it. But he did great, and I love all the the montage. The studio had this note, they wanted the montage of the reveals of all the different kills to be much faster. I was like, no, this is operatic. We gotta just revel in it. That he's done all these things, and I think what convinced them was the shot where he pulls off the mask and his hand is sort of out like this, and it was like, oh, okay, well, we'll let you have it because of that. There was a 3D reason to let it go. So
it's a good trick. Anytime you want to keep a shot the way you want it, just like at the last second, throw something at the screen so it can be 3D. They'll let you keep.
Yeah. Oh, look, he's gonna do this.
His hands out. Oh, we have to keep it now. It looks cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that Jensen made a Scream reference. That makes me like him so much more.
Yeah. No, very, very much. No, Jensen, that was, I think, just before starting his 4th or 5th season of Supernatural, which of course just ended like the year before last. But so that was, he is very genre astute.
Well, 2009 was a big year for those Supernatural guys, because you had Jensen in My Bloody Valentine and Jared Padalecki did the remake of Friday the 13th in the same year.
That's true. Yeah.
So was Jensen always your first casting choice for this movie?
We didn't think he was available because of the show and the timing of the show. So he's somebody we talked about early on, but didn't think that would work out. And so we had, talked about a few different other people. And then when it looked like we could make it work, and he agreed to do it, that was fantastic. But then we were told that if we ever, and dealing with technology that was a little unpredictable, we were told that every day he was late, if he was late one day, would be something like $200,000 billed against our production. So
out of his pocket?
No, out of our pocket, production's pocket. So we shot 6 to 8 weeks and incredibly long hours, and in order to get Jensen out on time. Which we did, but it was part of the brutality of the schedule.
I was going to say, would that make it hard if you needed to do reshoots with Jensen?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It would have made it very challenging, because we would have had to navigate around his schedule. We had talked about maybe shooting one extra scene in post with Jensen and Tom Atkins. And Kerr. We wrote it and talked about it, and then ultimately we're like, well, we don't need this. It's we're actually doing it because we wanted to have those actors back, and we wanted to have this fun scene with Jensen and Tom. So that was. It was very self-indulgent, and we had almost convinced ourselves that it was absolutely critical, and then it was just like, what the fuck are we talking about? We don't do that. So
I don't think anyone could blame anyone for wanting to shoot another day with Tom Atkins.
Well, and it was a fun scene as it it was the Jensen showing up where Tom Atkins is, and there's a thing on the radio about the latest killing of the mayor, and the two of them sort of suspecting each other, and it was a fun little detective thing where they both sort of have a little standoff, but it was totally unnecessary. It was just because we loved both those actors.
That's the best reason to shoot extra scenes. More of these guys, please. More of hanging out with cool people. Is ripping off Tom Atkins' jaw and kicking him over a balcony. Was that the beginning of your ongoing friendship? Because you guys have worked together a few times now.
Our friendship was really, again, my friend Tom Piccirilli, who came up with the ripping the jaw off, had said that Tom Atkins lives in Pittsburgh where we were shooting. So immediately arranged to meet him, and then we expanded the role of the sheriff, who originally died in the opening, but to keep him and bring him back. And then Tom and I met for like coffee at one of the hotels there, and the restaurant in the hotel. And I think we ended up being there for 2 or 3 hours and just hit it off immediately. That was, it was like first contact. We were instant friends forever. So
oh, good. We love
that's
hearing
where
that.
that came from. Yeah, no, he's a sweetheart. I adore Tom. We've I would try to put him in anything and everything. So.
Yeah, this is the way it should be. Tom
Yeah.
Kent should be in every film. It is still a shock to me that when he dies, because I'm so used to him being the hero. That even though I know, I've seen this movie a bunch of times, even though I know he dies, every time I'm like, oh, come on. But at least the reward is you get a really cool kill.
We never got to preview the movie because the movie was never done enough. We finished it and then I think 2 days later we showed it at Button-Umathon in the old Ain't It Cool News 24-hour movie thing in Austin, Texas. And so that was the first time we ever showed it to an audience. We have no idea what an audience would even think of it. And sitting in the audience and after Tom Atkins dies and somebody shouting, "No, not Tom Atkins," was pretty exciting.
It was Angus.
Yes.
Probably me. Just all the way from Melbourne. Like, no.
Yeah.
Because how do you do that effect when he's got the pickaxe through his jaw? Like, is it? I know most of it was CG.
Gary made that. So there's a full Tom Atkins head mold. So when the jaw gets ripped off, it's something that has like a 2-minute reset because it's done with magnets. So it's literally as you turn it, you can rip this part of the jaw off and then reattach it. And then the piece where he has it there, he's holding the pickaxe that's just cut off at the thing there, and then he has a piece that fits on his rotten teeth that he just sticks in his mouth like a mouth guard that has the top part of the pick on.
Oh, cool! How uncomfortable.
And he loved it. He had so much fun and just said, "This is the best ever." He was like spitting blood everywhere. He loved it. He had a great time.
Oh, that's awesome.
He was a great sport about it all.
Yep, more blood, more 3D, spit it everywhere.
Yes, yeah. No, that was a very
helicopter
fun thing.
spitting it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments in this film that I don't know if it's my brain making connections or if it's intentional. But there's a couple of moments that feel like almost like little nods to other classic films, just bits and pieces. There's some stuff like at the start, the two guys, Jason and Michael, which is just delicious. But also other things like the one of the biggest jump scares in the house. Oh, the character's name, Kevin. He gets the pickaxe through the head.
Ben. Yeah.
Ben.
You mean that you're talking about the Exorcist 3 moment?
Thank you. Yes. Oh my God, I'm glad I'm not insane.
Totally beyond a doubt.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly what that is.
When it happened, I jumped, and then immediately it was like, I know. Well, oh wait, I know that.
That was fully exactly that.
It's
beyond. Yeah.
Equally, if not more so, effective because it's just such a good setup with the 3D gun, and then the breaking the gun, and the laughing, and the walking in, and still the old drunk guy, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoop. God, such a cool. I'm glad I'm not crazy.
Yeah, no, not even remotely. That's exactly what that is.
Not about that anyway.
And there's a really cool flight where you introduce the town of Harmony. There's a really cool flyover you do towards the bridge, and the score at that moment is incredible, and the flyover shot is really cool, and you kind of coming in to meet the characters. And there was just a brief moment when that happened. I was like, this feels like an introduction to Woodsboro. There's like a moment where the camera's coming flying in.
I never even thought of that. That wasn't.
Maybe that's just my brain.
Just own it.
Yeah, I don't think we had any helicopter stuff in the Scream movies. That was, we had to build a 3D camera rig to go on this helicopter.
Oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Of course.
Yeah. So we shot all this helicopter stuff near the end, and went up and did that. And so that's from an actual helicopter. But it does have that vibe, and the score, Michael Wanmacher's score there. I love his whole score for that. That's a great.
Oh God, it's music so good.
As you introduce that,
yeah. Like the original Paul Zaza's one for the original film is one of my favorites. And then when I was watching this time, like this might be better. This might be a better score. It's so intricate, and it's really fun in parts, and it really plays so well with everything.
And it never hesitates to be massive.
No.
And big and sort of gothic and it as we all said in making it, the title told us everything it needed to be. It's like, okay, well, that's what we're making. Not my subtle Valentine.
I also saw online that there's like the nod to the Michael Myers head tilt. Was that on purpose?
That wasn't intentional. That was because that's in Scream. That I think is actually has more to do with characters who wear masks, because how else do they emote?
True.
I think that has more to do with that. That I think goes back to being in theater and actually doing mask work and stuff like that. I feel that is less specific to that, and that even the Michael Myers thing is more specific to the problems of having a character that's face is hidden.
And also
if you look at it, Luke Skywalker does the same thing when he goes to save Princess Leia. He does a little head tilt. He does the same thing when he's dressed as a stormtrooper. So, and that was before Michael Myers. So maybe Michael Myers stole that from Luke Skywalker.
Heard it here first.
Everything's the rip-off of Star Wars.
Absolutely.
I was actually going to say that one of the things I said to the guys before we came on, or late last night, I was like, oh my God, I've got to look this up for a cosplay, because this costume for a killer is so good. It's simple, it's efficient, and it blends in with, I guess, the work and the employment of a mine. And it's like, it's such a cool, menacing costume when it shouldn't be, really. I mean, it's just a workman's...
Yeah. It's in the gas mask thing. The gas mask is actually, I think it's a Russian gas.
Yeah, Russian.
Because it had, when we looked at so many different kinds of gas masks, and I like the fact that it was, had that they were perfectly round, so they were almost like emotionless. Same with the mouth, the mouth hole over that nozzle. The mask on the poster is actually wrong. That's a different mask. That's not the actual poster that's in the movie. Whereas the original mask is much more like almost the ski goggle mask. Yeah. Whereas this one, and wanted it, and just looking at all the different things with Leanne Rebecca, our costume designer, and the props department and everything, and Mike Sabo and Bob Spoor, we were just trying to come up with something that felt blank yet still threatening.
That's a great way to describe Harry Warden. Blank and threatening.
Yeah,
is it,
it's the emotionless quality of it that is frightening, because it doesn't care.
Is it Jensen in the suit at all?
That's what I was wondering.
Or is it? Did you have
Jensen's
a specific?
Some of the time. A lot of the times, it's a guy named Chris Cornell, Chris Carnell, who stunt performer who was wonderful and passed away a few years ago in a motorcycle accident. But he does a lot of it, and he is a good 3 or 4 inches shorter than Jensen. So we had to give him lifts in his boots and get him bigger shoulders. And, he had a whole super suit on underneath, whereas Jensen just wore it. And didn't need any of that. But Jensen is, certainly the killing of Megan when the mask and everything comes off. That's Jensen. Way Chris does it. The shot where Jensen is breaking the lights. So the way we did that is Chris was there in the in full wardrobe, and he had his the miner outfit on, and Jensen did it. And so Jensen did it first. And then we just played back the rhythm of it, and Chris just copied the exact same rhythm. And those are just cuts; they're not any effects. So Chris just does the exact same thing and the exact same angles. So that was one of my
favorite moments in it, because it's
mine
just
too.
A cool shot. It's also a really nice reference to the original, but making it elevated. It's
it's just, it was an opportunity when we were there, seeing, Chris is here, so you do the exact same thing, and it was just because we originally were just going to do it with Jensen, and then we were like, there's a really cool opportunity here to do this flash thing.
Shout out to the runner who had to go up and down that mine replacing the light bulbs every shot.
The thing is that so much of the movie was shot in that little area of the mine because it actually had the clearance. A lot of the mine was low. Where we kill Red was one of the lowest parts of the mine where we shot, and it was like you can feel the ceiling is right on top of you. And it's all that's real. We were underground, so.
And I think that's something that is really easy for audiences to overlook, but is really worth pointing out. when you watch a movie, most of the time, you know, the set is built around the shot. You're like, we need this, so put that wall there, put a light here, get rid of that, put that there.
Yeah.
When you're in a real mine that's really underground, you can't.
You're
move
not
nothing.
flying any walls. You're not doing any of that. You're and you know, is like 90 degrees above ground, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and like 50, constantly 50, 55. That's the temperature underground. That's what it is all the time, which was fantastic. So
Well,
that you
especially with
weren't
all
up
those
in the
lights and
heat.
stuff in there, it'd be great.
Yeah. What you did end up creating sometimes with the temperature flux and the humidity, because the all the drips and stuff that on is you'd create fog, unintentional fog.
Oh, wow.
Because the condensation in the lights would heating up the moisture and things like that. You'd create this like, we seem to have a fog bank rolling in that of our own creation. So that should happen.
Because how far underground are you down in the mine?
Not that far. We shot it all the underground stuff. I can't remember the name of it, but it used to be a coal mine, and then it had become inoperative and became a teaching mine. So people would go do tours and then like classes, stuff like that. So we could be shooting within 15 feet from the entrance of the mine.
Oh, okay.
And the temperature drops that fast.
Wow.
So we were shooting probably a couple hundred yards inside. Yeah.
It must have been so fun as a director to be in a space that is a real coal mine when you're shooting a movie about things that happen in a coal mine, and to get your performers into the space and be like, they're gonna give me a good show because they're really scared because they're really in here.
You're really there. There's really a lot of earth above you.
I saw clips of the special features, and we're all in hard hats, like for safety.
We had to all do mine safety training before we went in, and you had to wear your hard hat. And it was a real, people talk about coal miners and stuff like that, and talking to the old coal miners who helped us and things like that on the show, and their sort of love of being underground. And when you do it, you're like, oh fuck, I get it. This is a total seductive thing. I think for some people it will be completely the opposite, but there's something that really draws you into it. I was very surprised by that. That wasn't something I expected.
Just secretly digging tunnels in your backyard now.
I've been
Where's
digging
Dad?
tunnels here right now.
He's in the
It's underground right now.
Digging tunnels. This is my underground bunker.
Constantly writing underground scenes into all your movies now. It's like, why does the character just go into a hole for 20 minutes in this film?
Reason. Everybody's a secret mole.
I mean, you have set your upcoming film in a morgue, so maybe there is that's not bad. That's a nice
that's not bad at all.
Sealed, closed in little space. You're getting back there.
And the one we're just finishing right now all takes place in a bridge, so that was quite the opposite.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but that'll be out later in the year, next year, or whatever. Yeah,
takes so long for movies to get made. We want them now. We're greedy.
So long. Play Dead we actually finished a year ago, like last January. It's
wow. I mean, that's a bit par for the course for all the 2023 films. I think is so many directors being like, yeah, we did it a while ago. It's just been sitting there. We've just been waiting.
It's just like, oh yeah, I remember that.
And everyone's like, oh, this new movie. You're like, what new movie? Oh, that new movie.
Right. That one. Right.
I get it. I remember now. It's a lot of just, I don't know, a lot of behind the scenes stuff you guys have to deal with that we as fans never have to suffer through.
Stuff that has nothing to do with making the movie.
No, not at all.
We've just been talking offline about casting of Kerr Smith and how he was sort of typecast back in the 2000s as that like asshole sort of character, like from Final Destination. So was that sort of the reason for his casting as the potential killer in this movie?
Kerr auditioned for both parts. He auditioned for both Tom and Axel, and his auditions were just really interesting for both parts, and it came down that we had a list of Axels that we liked, and he was our first choice, and because we wanted somebody who because of all those other films he had done, you would think was the killer. So that was deliberate, but we also just loved his performance and thought he was really interesting, sort of the guy you love to hate. But then he's actually, his whole thing at the end when, I love that thing that Todd wrote of shoot us both. which he does so well because it's like that's a really interesting thing to say. Don't kill us, but shoot us. And then Tom's like, whoa.
Well, it's
that's
like
not a good idea.
It's almost like
that's
an
all
old school,
Todd.
almost like an old school Western hero kind of move.
Oh, totally.
The corral's like, all right, I'll die to save you, and
yeah,
it's like the nicest thing.
I've done bad things, and I know I'm not a good guy, but I am a good guy.
He plays it so well because he plays that character so well because I hadn't seen the original My Bloody Valentine before I watched this version, and the whole time I was like, it's got to be him. And he's just got that face where you want to hate him, and then he's really sweet when he smiles, but just other times we keep saying he's got that like sort of resting bitch face.
yeah, and he's a sweetheart to work with. They're both, those guys were just delightful. They had worked together before, I think, in like Dawson's Creek or something.
They had,
and so they got along really well. And that fight scene between the two of them at the end, they do absolutely every single part of that. There's only a stunt guy in like one thing, I think, when Jensen, Tom falls on his back. Which Jensen asked not to do, but because of the 3D, we discovered it was very hard to double anybody.
Of course,
it was easier to double Jamie King because of hair and stuff like that being so long. But for the two lads, it was. I mean, they were exhausted at the end of that day. But they were both so good at it. It was great fun to shoot it with them.
Welcome to work today, guys. Get in this hole in the ground and punch each other for 6 hours.
That was it. I mean, at the end, they were just like...
But it's a comfortable 50 degrees.
But it's a comfortable... Exactly. It's better than doing it in 90 degrees.
Exactly. No, I always love hearing that, like, they're nice people. I feel like we say that all the time, how we're big fans of the Scream movies, and it's lovely to hear that the people that you like watching on screen are nice people to work with. So
yes, and they were both absolutely lovely and easy and total professionals and just made everything. The days we had them, everything just was so much easier because they're so good at their job, not just the acting part, but the physicality part. And these are physically demanding roles for what we were asking people to do. So they were, that made things so much better.
Yeah, and it's the end result of having these two guys there who are good to work with and who are friends with each other and who are really into this. Is what you get from this film is, and I don't think I fully appreciated it the first time I watched it, but they're quite nuanced characters for a horror film. Like, horror films don't often put that much effort into characters. Yeah, and they're not high schoolers who are like, Becky, like they're
that was something that both Todd and I talked about a lot. That we did not want to make a high school movie. We felt that the more youthful elements of the story were all going to be done in the first 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes is basically a greatest hits of the original film. And it was designed to be that's what we wanted it to be. And then we skip ahead 10 years and they would be grown-ups with grown-up problems and do grown-up things. And that was very much what we wanted to do, and sort of the sins of memory and the sins of the past that come back. And we shot, because we had to shave Kerr, we shot all the opening stuff at the end. So we started with a beard, and then it was just like, okay, now we're going back in time so you can shave. So and in doing that, it really it was interesting, the idea of Tom's character being maligned in the past and his friends having done him a real disservice and betrayed him didn't really become clear until we shot that moment when they leave and he's just there with Harry, and then at that moment the whole thing just sort of clicked in my head. It's like, oh, these fuckers deserve it. Oh my god. Every one of them, they deserve it. We should have killed Sarah. We should have killed them all. if we'd made a sequel, I think we would have killed Sarah in the first 15 minutes, but but we never did so.
There's always time. There's
Yeah.
always time to kill Sarah.
Well,
We bring up Sarah, and obviously was played by Jamie King. Was that someone that you wanted, or she auditioned for the role?
Yeah, she auditioned, and the studio had worked with her, and she auditioned on the first day, so she was always at the near the top of our list as we went through the audition process, and we kept coming back to her as somebody that we liked and somebody that the studio really liked because they'd worked with her before. I think in the Frank Marshall, The Spirit.
Yes.
And
she was
so
in Sin City as well.
Yeah, which was Dimension, but the Lionsgate was very excited by that, and she had the right look and right vibe, that Final Girl vibe, and she had certainly done that before, so that worked out really well. And but yeah, she I think on their first day of auditions, she had come in, and I'd had sort of good luck with that. I think on Dracula 2000, Jerry Butler, Gerard Butler had auditioned for Dracula the very first day of auditions, and then we auditioned probably 1,500 people after that for that role, and kept coming back to Jerry as the person who we thought would be best, and Jerry, of course, kept calling up and saying, "Hey, I should be Dracula. Don't cast that guy. It should be me." As he was making Attila the Hun and Lithuania.
Sucks to be the other actors, like if you're coming in after Jared Butler, like you're starting.
Yeah, well, at the time, nobody, he hadn't been a lead in a movie before, so we were just said, here's a guy you should meet, and he walks in sort of looking the part, and his audition was really sort of thoughtful and powerful. And it was interesting that we had a lot of great auditions for that. People from all over the world auditioned for that role. And actually, one of the best auditions for that part was Lou Diamond Phillips.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
For Dracula. His audition was amazing. Yeah, I remember it to this day. Yeah. So, it's funny how things work out.
There's a fun what if for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and rewatch that film again now and imagine.
It's just kind of like, it would have had a different vibe, but we were thrilled that it worked out with Jerry, and he's a movie star, and he had that written all over that he was a movie star when he walked in. So you were just like, oh, wait a minute, and Wes spotted that too. Wes loved his audition and was a big supporter of it, but we had to go around a lot of other parks before we got back to that. I think it was just we cast him, I think the week before we started shooting, because we finally figured out how to get him. We had delayed enough that we could get him a week early out of Attila the Hun, out of Lithuania, and back to Toronto where we're shooting, and make that work.
I find it quite funny, just from my own brain, that we're talking about Dracula, and over your left ear I can see Nicolas Cage's face, and today the trailer for Red.
Oh yes, the trailer, which is very
so
fun.
We're talking Dracula, I just saw him this morning being Dracula. It's very funny for me how it still comes back around.
You gotta love Nicolas Cage. He is a force of nature.
Yeah, what a wild time it must have been for you to get to work with him in 3D.
It was great.
As well.
Yeah, Nick is a total pro. He walked in, the first day knowing the entire script, knowing every line of dialogue, and he's like, "Do you want me to read it like this? Do you want me to do it like this? How do you?" And highly directable, great collaborator. As long as you know your shit, you have to be prepared and not be stumbling around like an idiot. But he's a great filmmaker's actor.
One of my favorite quotes about Nicolas Cage that I just remembered, when he was working on this animated Spider-Man film, and he was playing Spider-Man Noir, and he was doing the character a certain way, and he's trying a few options, and the directors were like, "That's good, just a bit more," and they didn't really know quite how to say it, and then he stopped. He's like, "Do you want me to go full Cage?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's kind of what we're trying to say." He's like, "Okay, just tell me, man. I'll go full Cage." Like, he seems like somebody who has such an awareness of his presence and knows when to switch it on.
Yeah, I was lucky enough on the very first thing I ever directed, the little Prophecy movie, to work with Christopher Walken again, and Chris is the same way. He knows what you're looking for, and his whole thing was, if you have time, we'll do 4 takes, fast, slow, funny, serious, but he'll always make sure that one of those is the Walken.
Amazing.
It's they know what their brand is,
and it works a million times over.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you all day. I've
No,
asked
no,
so
no.
many questions. Cable Michelle, is there anything you want to ask? Because I will keep talking forever.
Oh no, just when we were talking, just when you disappeared before, about the pregnancy storyline, and was there any ideas to make that super gory, to have the baby in the heart-shaped box instead of a heart?
No, because in my mind she was never pregnant.
Okay.
In my mind it was always a lie. It was she was never pregnant. This was something that was actually Brian Pearson, the DP. We were during prep. One Friday night we were eating and talking about stuff, and then we came up with the idea is that she should say she's pregnant as a form of control.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, she was never pregnant. That was she is merely fucking with him. Yeah, that's funny. As people have said this to me, oh, it's the baby in the box, and like I remember that people saying it's like, the fuck you talking about? She's not pregnant. That psycho narcissist. She's just trying to get one over on Axel and Sarah, because she works for Sarah and thinks it's all empowerment on her part.
Karma. She got brutally murdered. So.
Yes, my feeling was always that she deserved it. But that's why. Yeah, that's funny. That a lot of people think that. And in my mind, that's never the case. That she was never pregnant. So that was never even a thought, because it was never the reality that was in my head. But of course, once I put it out there, the movie becomes whatever. It becomes the viewer's movie. So at that point, it's whatever you think it is, I guess.
Surely that would have got the X rating if you had a dead baby in a box.
I don't know. Dead baby in a box. That sounds very Scandinavian. Very dead girl in a ditch story.
Save it for the sequel. My Bloody Valentine.
Yes.
Well, speaking of sequels, you sort of did touch on it. But how much, how far did you and Todd discuss a possible sequel?
Oh God, we wrote a full sort of scriptment version, so half script, half treatment version of the sequel, and had it all laid out of exactly what we thought it would be, and how we thought that would work, and bringing back pretty much everybody who survived. Eddie Gathegi was going to have a huge part in it, and who plays Martin.
He's awesome.
Yeah. When we actually did our Halloween 3D that we never got to make back in 2009, 2010, whatever year that was. The lead we wrote for Eddie, which was quite a fun little book. But that was I bumped into Eddie at the airport flying out of LA a few weeks ago, and we're both masked up and all that kind of things, and recognizing each other. And he shouted my name across the way, ran up like the end of Love Actually, and
so sweet.
Can you talk a little bit about what the sequel would have entailed?
Sure. I don't think Todd would kill me. The idea was two sort of versions of it. If we had made it closer to the original, we were going to open it at the hospital immediately after the other, the first movie ends,
like Halloween 2.
And Sarah's at the hospital, waiting for her son to show up. Axel's going into surgery. They're about to put him undergo his surgery. She there's a phone transferred into one of the hospital rooms so she can talk to her son. She goes in that room and sees bloody footprints on the floor, and then discovers that Tom is in the bathroom, stitching himself up. And then he ends up murdering her in the beginning of that scene, and then you skip ahead so many months, whatever. And Axel, basically is trapped behind a window, then sees her die but can't intervene. Tom gets away, or Harry gets away.
Sounds a bit Scream too.
Yeah, so that was the opening. I think if the further away from that we got, the more we were going to not do that. And we would have done a version, if we wanted, Sarah to be in the whole story, we had another version that could have been that as well. But that was what we had thought was going to have the most sort of shock value. But the main way it started, that in every version that we had that started it, and the further away we got from the original, the way we thought it would be is either it's a different sort of mine, or it's a cave-in during the building of a subway tunnel or something like that, and you see on the news these rescue miners going in to rescue these people who are buried underground, and they can't get to them, and somebody goes down on basically like a spider on one line through this very narrow thing, with a gas mask, and you reveal that it's Tom, and he saves all these people. So that was the beginning, is him saving all these people with him coming out, and as his mask comes off, that's where he's captured in the news, and then Axel sees it on the news.
That's cool.
And Axel's like drunk or whatever at that point, and realizes, holy fuck, he's still alive. And then Tom was going to end up in a bar, where it's like a miner's bar, sort of thing, very much like the one we shot. So it has a bunch of mining paraphernalia all over it, and one of the sort of, local boy, redneck, whatever, starts giving him a hard time, and he just tries to ignore it, and he goes into the restroom, and he's trying to keep calm, and the guy comes in and sucker punches him in the back of the head, and his head hits the mirror cracks, and in all the mirror reflection is Harry Ward.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
And then he just sort of turns, and he walks out as the blood is sort of running down his face, and he goes to the door of the bar, and he locks it, and then you cut to above the door, and you look up, and there's a pickaxe above the door as part of the decoration, and he rips it off, and then he kills everybody at the bar. So that's how it was going to start. So because we wanted this idea of him being heroic and then murderous.
Yeah.
So that here he is, he saved all these people, he did this great noble thing, and then he also has that he's both things. And the story went up from there, and a
bit Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, but it's such a rarefied idea for a horror film where the good guy is the bad guy. You've got to sit there and be like, well, it's not really him that's doing it, but it is him that's doing it. And
it's the casting that really allowed us to really lean into that. Jensen is like, it's like Steve McQueen. He's a total hero. He's a great actor. He's got a great look, and that in and of itself allowed us to really play that in the first one. And then if we had continued, that's how we would have lent into that as well. The idea of having that actor who could be both things.
How do we make this happen?
Yeah, I know. We're getting 5
I think you'd have to call
movies.
Lionsgate and tell them there was a period of time there where we would go back every year and pitch them and say, hey, how about the sequel to this? How about and they were like, man, we're not really feeling it. We don't really want to make those kind of movies anymore. And it's just kind of like, oh, why? Because they make money?
Because people like them. Is that the problem?
Yeah. So we were shocked when they said they didn't want to do a sequel, but they felt that the Killers with Ashton Kutcher, that movie that came out, that was the where they were going to go, and then of course they fell into the Hunger Games movies, which were massive success for them. Great films, great stories, and everything like that. So that and then they did the Divergent movies and tried to, and that sort of petered out. And so they got further away from that. They even they went back to do a Saw movie or two, in Spiral, I guess. But
and then another Saw.
It's
Saw movie? I think they are.
Yeah.
Saw 10.
Yeah, my Bloody Valentine is a one-off. The original was a one-off, right? So it's and they occasionally say they're. I've heard them say they're looking to hire somebody else to make a new version of the movie, and all the power to them if they do. But yeah, I would certainly continue that adventure if
time to start the
just because
hashtags.
I love the characters, and working with those, that cast was lovely, and you'd have to bring back Tom Atkins with an iron jaw.
That's what I was going to say. Could be alive. You can live through that.
Yeah. He can chew steel.
God,
totally make that movie.
We need to make this happen.
Just make Iron Jaw Burke. that Tom Atkins character. Just
You got to
a movie
do what
about that.
they
I totally do that.
you got to do what they did with Deadpool and just shoot test footage of Tom Atkins with an iron jaw and then accidentally leak it. So everyone's like, "What the hell is this? We want this now!" And then they got no choice. Force their hand.
Yes, exactly. Yes, force their hand.
We will tag Lionsgate in this video and we'll start the hashtag My Bloody Valentine.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
In 3
Iron Jaw Atkins. The hashtag Iron Jaw Atkins. That's what we'll get.
Yeah, that's who doesn't want to see that?
My God, I'd pay twice to see that. That sounds so cool.
In 3D or in 4DX for this one, where there's like
yes, exactly.
sprayed
Whatever
with
that
blood.
is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
You're
little
literally
spray
sitting
jets
in
of
a
blood
chair
in
of
the
blood as you watch it.
We've
A waiting pool.
We've kind of touched on it already a little bit, but what's famous, especially when you work with Les and editing, a lot of cuts that MPAA wanted to have. I mean, was there much that you had to take out of this movie? It is gory, but I guess times have changed.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. At the time, the MPAA weren't equipped to watch 3D, so normally they judge movies in their little cloaks and shrouds and don't you don't quite know what happens in their secret meetings. But because they couldn't watch 3D at the actual MPAA offices, they actually had to come to Technicolor. So our Jason Fabreau, our color timer, was in the room as they were watching it. So we got to see the process of the 10 people who sit down and have their little tablets or pads and take notes. And what we did before we showed them the movie is we took the first take of the sex scene with Todd and Betsy is hysterical. It's about 3 times as long as what's in the movie, and it's so funny and out there and outrageous. And we just left all of that in. And knowing full well that's not how we wanted for the final. But that became very much their focus when they were watching. Apparently they were, into the movie. They were enjoying it and, laughing and reacting in the right spots. But that scene came up. Suddenly they were all making a million notes. And the only other thing we ended up trimming, I think we trimmed about 9 frames out of Kevin Ty's death, where Ben gets his head rammed on the thing. I think we trimmed that, and that was it.
Wow!
But after their reaction to that, we just sent them the version that was the real version, which is what's in the movie, and they were like, "Oh yeah, see, you listen to us," and it was like, wow. But that was a trick that I learned
on Scream 2.
Scream 2, because on Scream 1 we went through 9 different versions trying to get the R, and then in Scream 2 we had ramped up the violence so much worse. And then we had done that on White Noise 2. We had done a more violent version, but also a version where the score was totally bizarre. We used like the Hockey Night in Canada theme for certain sequences, and just things that were just made it completely goofy in order to try and because we had to get a PG-13 for that. But I remember doing that on Mighty Ducks 3, trying to get that PG-13. Because the first cut of Mighty Ducks 3 had a bench clearing brawl for a Disney movie. It was like, what the fuck is this? It was nuts that it had that. And everybody throwing their guns down, throwing their gloves off and beating the shit out of each other. Yeah, for a kids movie, it was great.
You don't expect to have the same problems on Mighty Ducks 3 that you have on My Bloody Valentine, but there you go.
It's everything's a lesson. It's all grist for the mill, right, as they say.
I was listening to a podcast about Brian De Palma the other day with Body Double, and he submitted Body Double, and the MPA was like, no way, and he's like, okay, and he took it back. And then sent them a letter. It's like, I really don't think I should change anything. Like, you have to change anything. And he got into a bit of a fight with them. And eventually he was like, okay, I'll change it. And he sent back the exact same cut. And they were like, thank you. And they approved it.
that happens a lot. In Scream, the because you could see the non-changed version, but they wanted that line of dialogue. Movies don't create psychos. Movies that make psychos more creative. They wanted that out. And that, that's just censorship, because that's not violence. That's a concept. And, Wes was like, we're not taking that out. That's part of the point.
Yeah. 100%.
Now it's iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the other example I remember is Fight Club with Marla, where the initial cut, she has the line, "I want to have your abortion," and everyone was like, "No, no, 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 no." And Dave Fincher said, "All right, I'll change the line, but I'm only changing it once. I'll never change it." And they're like, "Yeah, anything's better than that." And he changed it to her saying, "I haven't been fucked like that since grade school." And they went, "Oh, please change it back." And I went, "Nope, you made this bed. You lie in it." And that's what we got as an audience. So, you know,
yeah, well, you know,
it's what you wish for.
So much of that is pretty dumb. You know, that sort of puritanical. You know, it's how we all got fucked by the Pilgrims. It goes that far back. You want to, you know, really look at it. The Pilgrims fucked us all, like Puritans. We would have been better if the First Nations people had wiped them all out. But that's neither here nor there.
Because we were talking about this in our group chat, like the MPAA and the sort of double standards on why you can have naked females in a horror movie, but you rarely see naked guys running around.
That's true. Yeah. There's double standards of that, and then the double standards of Lord of the Rings, which can get a PG-13 when they're launching severed heads from catapults, and you know, we can't even have a head land on the ground. I mean, my God.
Oh no, they try and put that as fantasy violence, and then that sort of seems to be okay.
We're not making a documentary.
Yeah, I agree.
It's, you know, this is fantasy. Look at that. That's a total fantasy.
Well,
that could happen though. Elves, maybe not so much.
Yeah,
I don't know. Here's my pitch. If it could happen, it would have happened. I haven't seen anyone dressed up as Harry Warden run around with a pickaxe. So I think
yet.
Yes.
But I guarantee you, if you look back in history, people who catapulted severed heads over a wall, I guarantee you that shit happened.
Mm-hmm.
So just, you know,
context is everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but if you're a hobbit, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's the true rage of a horror fan right there. I can see in your eyes. It's like, why won't you just let me make cool shit? Just let me make cool shit. It'll look good.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Is you're trying to, you know, you're trying to do something that stands out. You know, in Valentine we really didn't, because the you know, Hostel and those movies had come up beforehand, and we were very adamant that we didn't want to make a torture kind of movie.
Yeah.
We wanted to, you know, the title told us what it needed to be, but at the same time it needed to be a murder mystery first and foremost, because that's what the movies of that era were, so many of them. You know, probably Halloween is the exception. But like, you know, the Prom Night and Terror Train and Happy Birthday to Me and The Prowler, and, you know, they're all murder mysteries. They're all go back to Agatha Christie, right? They're all, and then there were none. So that seemed to be, you know, what we wanted to do, and at the same time wanted to not fall prey to what the original fell prey to, you know, and its heavy editing in order to get it to our rating. And a part of that was the movie had, you know, was coming out not long after John Lennon had been shot, and so there was it was a huge backlash from things like that. So, and people, you forget that.
That's kind of the problem that Scream 3 fell into because of Columbine. Is it had
absolutely. We fell into that even with Dracula 2000, like ahead of time. Like how we had originally planned to shoot Christopher Plummer's death, Van Helsing's death. The day before we were going to shoot it, we were told we couldn't shoot it that way because of that. They were so worried about the violence. So it was just like, okay, well, yeah, we'll just stuff them under the bed. And, you know, it was, there was a lot of reaction to that, and people running around scared and getting blamed and things for, you know, a couple of whack jobs who you know, that's a total other discussion, that part of that American psyche of violence and gun culture that has a lot more, that has to do with something else, not necessarily what we do.
No, not at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do find it interesting. Like, I don't understand having standards, but I think when you have the horror genre, and if, like, again, my Bloody Valentine spells it out what type of movie it is, I don't know. If you have a rating on it and people know they're walking into a horror movie, I don't understand how you have to be so critique so much to cut
Yeah, well,
stuff.
it's
People
a reaction
should
to
know what
things.
they're getting into. Like, it's
Right. It's are you making the choice because of creatively you feel this is a better way to do it, or are you making the choice of fear of punishment, right? That's really what it comes down to. Don't make art, if we can call it that, with the fear of punishment. That's not good for anybody. Because then you're compromising everything left, right, and center, and you're betraying a fear, or you're bowing to a fear of government reprisal or public reprisal. And, I think that whole thing of fearing people getting triggered and stuff like that is that's a thing that you're like, wait a minute, if you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
You can't make everyone happy.
That's simple. Yeah, it's as you said, the title tells you what it is. The trailer tells you what it is. If you're afraid you'll get offended, don't go.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah.
Like, pretty simple.
I can understand if Wes put some sort of murder scene in music from the heart, or
exactly.
You want to be warned that there might be something like that. There might be a bloody death scene or something like that, but. I don't know. I do always think it's a bit weird. Like, I understand having a standard, but and I understand what ratings are there for. But I think once you label something, and this is a definitive horror film, it's a slasher film, it's going to be blood and gore, then I think almost all bets are off. It's on the person for going or making that choice to watch that film.
I mean, what's one of the goriest films of the last 20 years or so? It's Passion of the Christ. My God, that is you are for 2 hours you're watching this guy get his ass kicked in the worst possible, most violent way. That's more violent than any horror movie I've ever seen.
Yeah. Oh, it's deeply upsetting, that film.
Like,
God.
Yeah. And the Pope's seen it. Well, a dead Pope, but there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
R.I.P. It's look, this is amazing, but we should probably let you go. I did want to ask before we wrap up and let you go. Aside from Play Dead, are there any films 2023 coming up that you're pretty pumped to see? Any horror films
to see
films that you're really pumped for as a fan?
Certainly Renfield. I think seeing Nick Cage as Dracula, I'm very excited by that. If I'd been prepared for that question, I'm sure I could have answered it. But
that's a good answer.
There's always things that come out, and my wife and I watched The Menu last night, which we thought was great and very fun.
I still haven't seen it. I've heard nothing but great things.
One of my favorite movies of last year was actually Smile, which I was shocked at just how fucking great that movie was. I mean, it follows so many of the tropes and everything of the genre, but it just does it perfectly. Does it so well. One of my old assistants cut it, and Elliot Greenberg, and just did a magnificent job. And I love that film. And another film, not to talk about the past, but these are the films that sort of surprise you, right? It was Goodnight Oppie. You see that movie?
No.
Goodnight Oppie is about it's a documentary about the Opportunity rover on Mars.
Oh, right. Yes.
It is fucking great. And of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once is brilliant. But down the road, it's always sort of a surprise what shows up, because there's so much content. And it's hard to say, I'm looking forward to this one thing that's coming out months from now. I can barely even pay attention to what's coming out 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing to anticipate.
Especially these days when they keep changing release dates and things keep getting pushed back, and I feel like
and then released in a variety of different formats and everything like that. It's everything's sort of strange, and it's a strange world in which we live. So half the time now it's just going to the movie. It's just fun to actually go to the movies. It's like, I don't even know what I'm seeing,
Well, can we ask you, when we talked to you last time, Scream 5 hadn't come out, but you'd obviously maybe seen a rough cut? Or...
I had, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Knew it.
I was going to ask, had you pretty much seen the film now? And you also had did you do you did a voice
Yeah,
So,
one of the
yes.
voices they asked for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
What do you think? Obviously, you
No,
spoke
I thought it
highly
was
of it, but
great. I thought the two directors did a wonderful job, and I think they were so reverential to the material that it's a tough, the big shoes to fill. And I think they went at it in the right way. I think they did really well with their new characters, and their treatment of Dewey, especially, I thought was
I was going to say Angus
excellent.
is probably going to ask about that.
Yeah,
I'll never stop being mad. I'll never stop being mad that they killed him. I'll never let it go.
Hey, he was supposed to die in the first one.
I know. Look,
he was supposed to die in the second
point
one.
of view,
They just
I
kind of
get
showed
it.
him in the ambulance.
I get it as a
but I
appreciator of
think
art,
it's
but as a fan of Dewey, it's heartbreaking.
I think in order for the franchise to keep going, shedding some of the legacy baggage is a good thing, because you can end up being in service to something that is it's like it's like a reunion tour. It's just kind of like you can't play new material if you're stuck just asking for the hits.
Yeah, shut up and play the hits.
Yeah, and I think that's how the franchise can keep going. Is to they clearly are, there's a real, as I said, a real reverence to the legacy part of it, but at the same time it's important that they make it theirs and move beyond that. I think they're so incredibly talented, so I think that's and I think their approach to it is right, because it is, it's a tricky thing to do.
It's almost like you have a really good handle on where it's going, and Scream 7 could come around and perhaps have a different person in the director's chair. I'm just making a pitch that maybe it might be a good idea if I don't know.
I have a feeling that
if a Canadian American director took over the helm for the 7th
Yeah,
installment.
well, I we'll see what happens. I'm sure
they're sorted.
Yeah, the lads are all on top of it. So
I have my dream world in my head, and that's where I like to live. When the credits roll for 7, I know what's up.
Yeah. Randy's back and he's still alive and behind it all.
That's a whole other story.
Yes.
That's a whole other story.
It's just it'll just be his head on a skateboard. Let him remote control car, and I'll just speed. Sure, yeah, I'd do that.
That'd be fun. And somehow Tom Atkins is in there with a steel jaw as well. Just
of course. Yeah, who doesn't want to, you got to have Tom Atkins.
You have him with the steel jaw, and you have him be Sheriff Burke, and it turns out that they exist in the same world. They're in the same universe.
Yeah, all of them. You just bring back, you do the Expendables of horror. It'll be great.
Oh, see, now you're pitching something great.
He's just not sexually harassing everyone in the hospital like he was in Season of the Witch.
Yes, exactly.
That's such a fun. I think that's everything I can think to ask. Are you guys happy?
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right, then. This has been incredible. I am delighted that we had you on to talk about My Bloody Valentine and Spyro to talk about so many other wonderful things that you've been a part of. Thank you so much for coming back on the show once again, Patrick. We're pumped for Play Dead. We're pumped for the is it an as yet untitled movie on a bridge?
It is as yet untitled. Yes,
the as yet untitled Patrick Lussier bridge film. We're pumped for that. There are so many sequels in your history as well that you've directed that hopefully one day we can coax you back again to talk about some of your other projects. But thank you for coming on, and it's been a delight. Patrick Lussier, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been great to chat with you all. Enjoy whatever happens next.
By definition alone, there are fewer films. Films.